Good evening, church. How are we doing tonight? Hey, it's raining outside. How amazing is that? Let's give God a big hand for that. Whew. For those of you who don't know, I'm Dan Horst. I'm the pastor of student ministries here at River Valley. And every once in a while, they let me come across the street and get a share. So I'm really excited as we continue on in this Sermon on the Mount series. You guys, were you encouraged like I was as we really went through the first 12 verses that Mark took us through? So many good things, right? Yeah, right? I just picture, here's Jesus, the greatest message ever spoken, and we get to continue to hear it. And I want to paint the picture a little more. You know, we see this mountainside, and Jesus is up there, and he has his disciples and the crowd that is gathered. And as we've learned through the first 12 verses that he's speaking to those who are in the kingdom, those who are believing, those who are followers of Jesus. And he's given us this shocking, this outrageous introduction as he's gone through the Beatitudes. And they may have been caught off guard, but it's okay. Because he's reminding them that we don't have to be like the kingdom that we're in. We don't have to be like everybody else. It's okay to be different. And actually, it's amazing to be countercultural. So he's going to continue on. Remember, he said, congratulations, you are blessed for going against the grain. So because of what he shared, we need to be reminded that it's not because we have those qualities and because we earn those qualities that we become saved. No, it's because we're saved, and once we're saved and once we believe, then those qualities come out in our lives. And so we have to get that right. We have to go in the right direction. And Mark brought up this point of we're in this kingdom that is now and not yet. It's the now, just as Jesus was here, but it's the not yet because it's still yet to come. And we're in that. And the best part of this whole message is as he was speaking to the believers on this mountainside, it still applies to us today. Because we're still in that kingdom of the now and the not yet. So Jesus keeps going. He keeps moving on in this idea of because you are in the kingdom, what's next? So because you're in the kingdom, you're going to live countercultural lives. Because you're in the kingdom, you believe in Jesus. And you are in this kingdom of the now and the not yet. So we're going to continue to live differently. We're going to continue to live countercultural lives. So Mark gave me 4 verses today. And I was super excited until I started to study. And these 4 verses are so crammed, packed with so many awesome, the scripture just, it breathes, it lives. And I've changed my message 4 or 5 times just this week alone. Because I keep learning more and I keep unpacking it myself. And I hope we'll be brief tonight. We'll see. Thanks for being gracious early. The verses tonight you may be really familiar with. But I hope that it's not just something you've heard before and you kind of just take it and don't unfold it for where you are today. Because I know when the word is true and the word is God-breathed, it's going to meet each of us at different places at different times. And that's part of the problem, I think, where I've been, because the things that I thought before, maybe they're not always the same because I'm changing, because I'm growing, because I'm maturing. So we are going to look at this passage, and I love the pictures that Jesus uses. You know, I'm a longtime youth guy, so anytime I see pictures, I love it. Because I'm creative, I like art, and I really like things that I can hold on to. They're tangible. It helps me understand, it helps me learn, and I hope that it'll help you learn. And I like it. Jesus used them, so he used object lessons, so it must be the way to go, right? Maybe some of the ones I've used up here. I had 4 wheelbarrows one time up here, talking about the 4 soils, that parable, the different spots that we can be growing in God. Or maybe you remember when we made this whole place smell like bread. That was like my favorite illustration. Like, here we're going through Mark chapter 8, and we just made this place smell like bread. Oh, that was great. But here Jesus is, as he shares in the sermon, and he goes to some things that they would have known what they looked like. Two items. The items of salt and the items of light. So we are in Matthew chapter 5, in the 13th verse. We're going to start there, 13 through 16, just 4 verses, like I said. And as we read these, I want you to imagine the people on the mountainside, and Jesus is painting this picture for them, and he's painting the picture for us. Verse 13, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people put a light on a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So the two pictures, these two items that Jesus uses that the people on the mountainside would have understood, and I think that we can understand as well. Right? Salt and light. Salt. We like salt. I mean, maybe, high blood pressure, it could be a problem. Don't want to have more salt. But we like salty things. Like watching football, you got to have popcorn or pretzels or chips and salsa. It just goes together. Like I'm a coach, and so like kids cramp up, you give them salt. You put the salt in your tongue, and it's supposed to take, like we like salt. We use it. We see it. Maybe when you think of salt, you just think of the cute little lady, right? The cute little girl with their umbrella. It's a good, right? That in your cupboard, right? You fill up maybe it's your decorative salt shakers. Like every holiday, you have like a different ones you bring out. And then we get to light. We all understand light. It's not an abstract thought. You come into a room, you flip the switch, and light. And, that's amazing, right? It's so great that you just walk in, you turn the lamp, and you can see. Or you light a fire, and it puts off light. Or you drive in the dark, you use your headlights. It's not something that doesn't make sense. And Jesus uses things for simple people like me that are simple to understand so that I can understand, and it makes sense. And we even get to the point of light that when we don't have light, it actually can affect us physically, right? I mean, there were the entire month of August when we had smoke filled our sky and we didn't get to see the sun and we didn't get to see very much light. I don't know how I felt just cruddy. Or, we do have the winter months that the sun doesn't like to shine very much, and it's a real thing to have seasonal affective disorder. Like without light, you can actually, your body just doesn't work well. You get like kind of a gloomy feeling over yourself. And you need vitamin D. You need that light in your life. And so Jesus uses these two pictures of salt and light to remind us of how we need to live in this world. So as we look at this, Jesus goes and he starts off and he hits them hard. He says this. He says, you are. He doesn't say you're kind of like, no, he says you are salt. Right there in verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. Then he backs it up with you are light. You are the light of the world. I think if you're like me, maybe we need to remember who we are. Because our world, our culture tells us so many things of what you should be and what you're going to be or who you are or what you already are. We maybe hear all the things that we try to be labeled with as, yes, male and female. You're rich or poor. You're happy or sad. You're a duck. You're a beaver. You're fancy. You're plain. But all those things are telling us who we are in one form or another. And Jesus goes, your identity, who you are salt and you are light. So remember, he's talking to the people in the kingdom, talking to people who are following him, people who believe, and he goes, your identity, all the way to the heart, is you are salt and you are light. So when he tells the people that he's speaking to on this mountainside that, he tells it to us as well. So the title of my message tonight is Salty and Bright. Are we going to be salty and bright in the world today? And our big idea is this, that when we are in this kingdom, how do we influence those around us as salt and light for the next kingdom? How do we make an impact on an unbelieving world? So I found this cartoon, this comic. If you like Peanuts, I do. So Peppermint Patty and Chuck, they got this relationship, right? So here's Peppermint Patty. Guess what, Chuck? First day of school, I got sent to the principal's office. It was all your fault, Chuck. My fault? How could it have been my fault? Why do you always say everything is my fault? Well, you're my friend, aren't you, Chuck? You should have been a better influence on me. Right? Like, we kind of think that someone should influence me, but here's the deal. Not just influence to be a good person, not just influence to not get sent to the principal's office, but are we going to be people who influence for the kingdom of God? To be a better influence on those around us. So, how do we be salty and bright? How do we live lives that influence the culture that we're in? You are salt and you are light. And it's not because you eat a lot of salt that you are salt. It's not one of those things. It's not because you use like your sea scrub bath salts, right? And you whatever. You're not doing light therapy that makes you more light, or you're not white like me that some people say I'm kind of light. No, it's we are truly being called salt, and we are truly to be the light of this world. And in order to be salty and bright, I think there's a few things as we unpack this passage you're going to see that we need to be working through. And the first thing in order to be salty and bright is that we need to be filled. Okay, we need to be filled. We need to know that on our own, this lowly person in me and the person of you, we cannot be salty and bright on our own. Now, students that I work with, you hear that word salty, they kind of think, oh, that's like you have this bad attitude, right? You have this salty disposition, upset, angry, bitter. Okay, it's not even that. Because I can be that kind of salty on my own, but I can't be the salt of the earth on my own. I need to be filled. So in order to be filled, remember, he's talking to Christian people. He's talking to this kingdom people. And he goes, our job is to be the willing vessel. That's all that I can be, is I can be the willing vessel. I can't be salt on my own. I can't be light on my own, but I can be the salt shaker. Right? I can be the salt shaker, but guess what? I have to come as an empty salt shaker. I need to be a willing salt shaker that when fully empty, then I can get filled up. But too many times we come as an already full salt shaker. And we're full with all kinds of things. They may be good things. These are pretty things. Just took them from my daughter's room. But they're bright and they're shiny, right? Those things may be good, but when they're full, they're not salt, and I can't fit salt in there. So I need to be the willing, empty vessel. I need to be emptied out of all the things that I bring with me so that then I can be filled. When I'm filled, I can be used. When I'm filled, now it's not me that's the salt. It's the salt is there because the Spirit filled me with salt. Empty yourselves. Be willing and be able to be filled with salt. Same thing is true when it comes to the lamp, right? The lamp has to be empty. Cool little old oil lamp. This oil lamp needs oil in it so that it can start and light. If I come full of, I really like coffee. If I come full with coffee in my lamp, is it going to light? No, I need to be empty so that then I can be filled with that which will be light. Empty and willing so that I can be filled. Ephesians 5:18 says this, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine that leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." We need to be filled with the Spirit. And that word filled, if you go to the original Greek, is not a one-time filling. Because hopefully our salt we end up using, and we need to be continually filled over and over and over. Because it can never come from my strength. It has to come from the Spirit filling me so that I can be used, so I can be poured out. Ongoing filling. Just like the light, I can't fill the light with anything but the Spirit as well. John 8:12 says this, "When Jesus spoke to the people, he said, 'I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life.'" So Jesus is the light of the world. When we follow him, he fills us and we become light. We won't walk in darkness, but we will be the light of life. Jesus says, "You are the salt." He says, "You are the light." But you need to first be the willing, empty vessel that is filled with him so that you can be salty and bright. Once we're filled, we have a purpose. And our purpose is that we need to be intentional within that purpose of influencing those around us. See, our purpose and our mission is to influence. We may have the identity as salt, we may have the identity as light, but we have to put it into practice. See, he called the people in the crowd salt and light because they understood that both those items, that salt and light, were very useful in their day. Salt was actually not only useful, but it was actually used as payment for soldiers because it was so valuable. So they all would know, why do we use salt? And they knew how important it was to have light. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people put a lamp under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. We need to be salt and be light. We need to influence those around us for this next kingdom, to be intentional, to be influential, where? Everywhere we are. In our community, in your homes, in your schools, at your jobs. Will we be an influence? So what are some things that salt and light do? There's so many, and I just grabbed a few of them that we're going to look at today. But some of the things that salt does is salt preserves, salt flavors, salt creates thirst, light dispels darkness, light guides, and light reveals and illuminates. So let's kind of open them up a little bit. Salt preserves. So realizing in the context historically of where Jesus was, there wasn't like, you got to go put your, all your T-bones in the refrigerator. You're not going to go, no one had their Yeti coolers that they could go use to keep everything cold. No, they actually would use salt as a preservative to keep their meat fresh. And kind of an interesting way to think about it, you would take the meat and you would rub all kinds of salt all over it, rub it in. And what it would do is it would suck the moisture out of the meat. And if you understand science, all the little microbes that cause food to spoil, they need moisture to grow. So when you put the salt and you rub it in the meat, it draws the moisture out of the meat, and therefore it preserves that which is there, and you can eat your steak later. So this whole idea that we need to be a preservative, that we need to come in and preserve the world around us, the culture we're in, It's not necessarily always to be a good thing, but we just basically need to slow the bad that's going on in our society. We need to, come in and preserve the moral decay that is happening again and again, day after day. So as salt, we are salt, we come in and we do that. As believers, we preserve our society. We keep it from spoiling. We keep it from going bad. Salt also flavors. I like food. I'm not going to lie. It's just good, right? Especially I like good tasting food, right? You give me something that tastes really good, I'm going to go back for seconds. And there's those moments where you go and you start eating and you're like, this is really bland. It's really tasteless. Man, I don't have to worry about those seconds or thirds. So salt flavors. First of all, flavors because people like salty things. Just that. I mean, you can take and just, put salt in something, like I said, chips and salsa. You need the salt to make it good. The whole saltless chip thing, low sodium. It's really rough, right? We need flavor. Salt brings flavor. Not only does it a good flavor on its own that your taste buds jump and scream, hurrah, it's also the thing that enhances other flavors. I don't know whoever thought of putting sweet and salty together, but they've done a good job. I mean, we have like salted caramel, mochas and breves. You can get your coffee. And right now, one of my favorite things is, peanut butter filled pretzels. Those things are just the best. It's sweet and salty, right? And so the salt actually brings out the flavor in the sweet. They enhance each other. And that's the way we should be. We should be enhancing the flavor that's there as salt. Psalm 34:8 says it like this: taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. Taste and see. We are that sprinkling of salt that helps flavor, that makes it taste a whole lot better. And not because we're making it taste like us, we are sprinkling the taste of Jesus. We are sprinkling Christ. He's filling us so we can be poured out. We should be making Christ more tasty to those around us. Salt also creates thirst. I think we've all probably heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you can lead a Horst to watery too. And no, that was bad. Dad jokes. But here's the thing. If you put salt in a Horst's mouth, I'm going to want to go take a drink. Right? So salt creates thirst. So if we are salty Christians, we should be creating a thirst for Jesus in those we come in contact with, in those that we're influencing. How we talk, how we act, how we live. Colossians 4:6 says, let your conversations always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Your conversations should create a thirst for Jesus when you are in the influence, in the places you're at. In your jobs, in your families, those people should hear about Jesus and be thirsty for what you have. We need to impact those places in such a way that they want more of what, first of all, that they see there's something different, and then they're thirsty for what we have. Influence as salt influences the world. But not only does salt influence, but light influences, right? The first thing that light does, and we're going to look at tonight, is light dispels darkness. So, I don't know if this is going to be mind-blowing for some of you. It was a little bit for me. But light and dark are actually not opposing forces. Hang in there with me. Darkness is just the absence of light. So in that, when you turn on light, light dispels darkness. They can't be together. You can't have both light and dark living together. I remember, it's been quite a few years back, but we took our student ministry trip and we went over to the lava beds over there in Klamath Falls, the national park over there. And we camped and we did all the little hikes. I remember going, through all the the catacombs and all the different, caves. And if you've ever been in a cave, you've got to be ready, right? You got your headlamp, you got your helmet, long sleeves, pants. Yes, I did wear pants once to go through the caves. But you crawl around, and some of the places are so tight, it's like you have to take a deep breath in and squeeze through. And there was parts, we went on this, one of the hikes is called the catacombs. And it is a windy, and there's parts where you have to literally turn your head sideways because it's that narrow. And the only thing that I knew that I could make it was because there was another leader who luckily was bigger than I was, and he was in front of me. So if I knew if he made it, I would make it. So that was good. But we took this whole long, hard, climb through these caves, and we got to this room called the elephant room. And really big opening inside these really tight caves. And I remember we all turned off every light, all of our headlamps, the flashlights, and it was pitch black. There was no light anywhere. And I remember sitting there, and at first you're kind of like, everyone's loud, and then all of a sudden you start realizing, okay, this is weird. You put your hand in front of your face, and you're like, yep, I know it should be there, only because my arm moved it, but I can't tell it's there. And you sit there longer, and you begin to think, is there anybody else around me? Is up, is down? And you get disoriented. And after we sat in that for a while, I remember one of the leaders, he touched his Indiglo watch. Now, we're talking a huge room in this Indiglo watch, and I was so amazed at how bright a little watch could be. Because light and darkness can't live together. That little light was all it took to shine so bright. So are we the light that is dispelling the darkness in our world? John 1 verses 4 and 5 says, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Jesus was life, and Jesus is light, and light shines in the darkness, and light shines in you because you're filled with the light, so darkness and light can't live together. And darkness cannot overcome the light. You are the light of the world. You shine the light of Christ so that darkness cannot overcome you and cannot overcome those that you're with. Be an influence and dispel the darkness. Light also guides, right? You have to have a light usually to see. And we can all probably point to a time where we had the lights off and we were walking through and you take your little pinky toe off on the edge of the bed. Or if you have kids and you're walking through your living room, and I'm not joking, but Legos, when it's dark and you step on them, it's like every kind of spike and it's right through your foot and you want to jump up and down and scream. But you need light to guide you. Why do we, in the dark, we have lots of cool inventions. Flashlights, headlamps. We put headlights on our cars. All those things that help guide us to where we're going. Psalm 119, verse 105 says this, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. See, we have this word as a guide for us, for those of us who believe in Jesus, and we have the light in us, and now we are to be a guide for others. We're to help guide those who are walking in darkness. The lamp guides my path. We need to guide others. Final thing is light reveals and or illuminates. Light really helps us to reveal and help us see things the way they really are. When you have a really good light source, you can see all the detail. Right? You get to see in HD. When you have a splinter, you don't go in a very dim room to try to pull it out. No, you get the most bright, intense light so you can see all the detail of where that splinter is. Or what about colors? When you have a good light, all the colors pop. It reveals, it illuminates the things of Christ. So verse 16 said it like this, in the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. We let our light shine so people can see the detail of Christ. We let our light shine, like it says in the passage, like a city on a hill. If you ever fly and you fly in at night and you're flying over, usually over the ocean and it's dark and super dark, and then you fly in, last time I flew into LA. And as you get close, all of a sudden you start to see lights. And when you get to LA, there's like every light known to man, especially like flying over Disneyland, right? They got that place lit up like it's daytime all the time. And it's amazing, and you can see it for miles and miles. It can't be hidden. You see every detail. Now, if you fly into Merlin, you get a couple lights on the runway, and maybe you can see the house over there or the house over there, and it's not very bright, not very much detail. See, the city on the hill, people could see and know, and that's what our light should be, to reveal, to illuminate the things of Christ. But it's even more like this. It's more like the moon. You ever think about the moon? The way the moon shines bright in the night sky. So the moon on its own has no light source, right? The moon does not have a glowing ball of fire that makes it light up. No, the way the moon lights is it reflects the sun's light for us to see. So we are like that same light of the moon. See, we on our own don't have a light source. We have to be filled with a light source. Or even better, we reflect the light of the S-O-N. See, we become like the moon and we reflect the Son of God. And when we reflect God, other people can see God everywhere we are. May we shine and reflect Christ in our culture, in our community. So both salt and light, to actually have its purpose to be used, they have to come in contact, right? You can't just leave the salt on the shelf. You can't leave it in the cupboard. You can't leave the lamp off. It has to come in contact with darkness. So we have to be used. We have to be out and about. We have to be in our community as salt and light. So we're continually yielded. We're being filled. We're being used to be preservers, to be flavorers, to be those who cause thirst. We're connected to the Spirit, so we dispel darkness. We guide and we illuminate. And we're intentional in all those. But the final thing that we have to be is this: we have to be faithful. You see, it's really great to be salty and bright once. But we need to be salty and bright all the time. Just as being filled was a continual filling, being salty and being bright is a continual process. We need to continually be an ongoing pursuit of that in the places that we live, in the places that we walk. And if we're not faithful to it, what happens? Look at verse 13. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. And then verse 15 says, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light for everyone in the house. See, we need to be faithful to let our salt be salty and let our light be bright. So you're asking, how does salt lose its saltiness? You know, if you take salt, pure salt, this is my 1-minute chemistry class lesson. So salt is a very stable compound. It's NaCl, sodium chloride. And salt is pretty hard to break down. If you take a big chunk of salt, like you'd have a salt lick out in your field, and you begin to break on it and chisel on it, you don't break down salt, you just get smaller pieces of salt. If you take salt and you put it in water to dilute it, okay, you make it a little less salty, but if you evaporate the water out of that salt, it goes back to the residue that's left is still salt. So in our context, losing our saltiness doesn't really make sense. But we have to know historically the way Jesus and the people on the mountainside would have understood what salt was. See, salt wasn't found as pure like we have today, bright white and also pretty. No, salt was actually gathered from swamps and marshes that were salty. And they would gather it, and it would not just be pure salt. It would have other things mixed in. Whether it was sand and gravel, other chemicals, other minerals. And as you would use it, or as it would be in the elements, and maybe it would be wet, and it would leach, the actual salt would run away, you'd be left with all the other stuff. You'd be left with the sand. You'd be left with the gravel. You'd be left with the other minerals. And eventually, it wouldn't be salty. And it wouldn't be good for anything. It's not going to preserve. I don't want to rub that on my T-bone steak. It's definitely, not going to flavor. I don't want to put it in my mouth to create thirst. So it becomes worthless. And this worthless residue needed to be thrown out onto the road to be trampled on, because basically that was all it was good for. So if we continue to let impurities fill our life, we don't let our saltiness be salty. So it would kind of look like this. Too many times we let so much junk in our life fill us. The impurities of our in and out of our days. The things that maybe we think are more important. And those things fill us so that no longer are we salty. We have to rid ourselves of that. The second picture is this, that we have a lamp and we light it. Great, it's a good idea. Let's light a lamp so that everyone can see. And no one would ever think to light a lamp and then cover it. Because it defeats the purpose of light. It defeats the purpose of having a lamp, because in this time, you would have a lamp, a candle, something that would cast off light, and you'd put it on a stand, and you'd put it high in your house so that it would cast light for everyone. You would never hide it. You would never let it be useless. So we need to have faithful use of salt and faithful use of light. Don't hide it under a bowl. Don't have it be filled with useless gravel. I know that most of us, if we were honest with ourselves, would say there's times where I'm not as salty as I would want to be. Or I'm not living a life that's as bright as I should. And I look back when I was in high school, and this was me. I lived my life with my light under a bowl. For you who don't know, I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in Mount Shasta with 5,000 people. So when you're in a school of 400, graduating class of 68, and your dad's one of the few pastors in town, pretty much everyone knows that you're the Christian kid. But I didn't influence the community around me. I didn't take the time to be salty with my friends and flavor them with the flavor of Christ. I didn't shine my light bright. Now there were times, man, Sunday mornings, I really had it, right? I was so bright. Look at me. Monday morning, nope. Wednesday night youth group, oh yeah, here, let's put some more salt out. Throughout the week, it was just left in the cupboard. We can't let our salt lose its saltiness. We can't put a bowl over our light. So how do we go about it? We have to go back to the first thing, which was yielding. We can't do it on our own. We have to know that our influence comes from Jesus. Our influence comes because he's in us, not because I have it all together. And the best thing is at verse 16, what does it say? In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and give you all the glory, right? Oh, no. No. Glorify your Father in heaven. See, if we just try to be salt and light for our own sake, we want people to look at us. We want to be the good people. We want to be the moral people. But that should never be the reason that we're salty and bright. We're salty and bright to give God glory. That we're salty and bright, that other people would have an influence, but that he gets the glory. So what about us? Are we going to this week or this year, this time of our life, will we be salty and bright? Will we look for ways to preserve, to flavor, to create thirst, dispel darkness, to guide, to illuminate Christ in every place we find ourselves? Will we be a better influence? Will we flavor our world? Will we light those that are around us? Let's pray. God, I thank you that you are the one who makes us salty, that you're the one who gives us your light to shine. And I would pray that we would even just this night, we would look for ways that we maybe let the impurities of this world make us lose our saltiness. And we would get rid of that. And Father, would we not live our lives or light under a bowl? Instead, God, may we shine so bright and may we salt so strong that you get all the glory. Praise things in your name. Amen.